Hello, my name is Natasha, and I'm going to be talking about my TBR for January 2023 and also my reading year in 2022. I made a booktube video at the beginning of 2021. I had a pretty good reading year that year. This year, however, was an absolutely awful year. Also, I haven't posted a video since. I don't know. I just didn't. I don't know what else to say. This year, I don't know if anybody else has felt this way. I have a couple friends who are readers. Some of them also did not enjoy a lot of what they read this year. Some people read even more than usual. They exceeded their reading expectations, which is great. However, for me, I don't think I've ever had a year where I've disliked so much of what I read in my entire life. And it was not fun. I love reading. I've loved reading since I was a little kid. It's like breathing to me. No, it's not like breathing, but you know what I mean. It's like my hobby. Like people have things that they do and I like to read. And a lot of this year I just didn't feel like reading. I didn't like the books that I was reading. I read so much fan fiction this year. Hermione fan fiction, also Reylo fan fiction. And I definitely do count like really good, long, very well written fan fiction. Like I'll count that as a book. Yes, that is a book to me. I am reading. However, I did not read a lot of physical published books. And a lot of the ones I did read I didn't like. I gave really low ratings, like in my mind. Maybe not necessarily on Goodreads, but in my mind I was like, I didn't like that, didn't enjoy that. And I did not finish so many books. I did mark some of them on Goodreads just to like remember what I started and what I didn't like. And some of them I didn't. I just started reading and then I just left it. I'm a really big romance reader and a lot of romances disappointed me this year. A lot of romances left me feeling unfulfilled. And there were very few books that I read this year that really sparked joy, which I guess is why I turned to fan fiction. I haven't read this much fan fiction since I was like 16, like 10 years ago, since I was in high school. But fan fiction is like, you know that you can see the tags, you know that you're probably gonna get a happily ever after, which I mean is the case for most books in general, especially romance, but you can see the tropes that you like, and I don't know. I guess that's why I turned to fan fiction so much this year, but I don't really know. I think that 2020 was a big reading year for me and for many people, because we were all stuck at home. 2021 was like we were kind of leaving this whole stuck at home era, still reading a lot because I had just gotten myself into that habit even more so than usual during 2020. And then this year was kind of more like getting back to being a real person and getting things together at work and hanging out with friends who I haven't seen maybe since before the pandemic. And just, it's not necessarily that I didn't have a lot of time for reading, it's more that I didn't enjoy what I was reading, so I didn't necessarily want to push myself. And that's something else I would like to talk about super quickly before I get to what I'm gonna read in January. I think this year more than ever, I really did not push myself to finish any books that I wasn't enjoying. Whereas before I might have, my dog just walked in, she opened the door with her head. Should I pick her up so she could say hi? This is Darcy, named after Mr. Darcy from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Okay. Like I was saying, I think in previous years I would have maybe pushed myself to finish books that I wasn't necessarily enjoying or had tropes that I didn't like or characters that I didn't feel connected to. Sometimes like just so I could add to my reading goal and be like, oh, I read 60 books or I read 70 books this year. Sometimes just because I was like, well, I started it, I might as well finish it. This year more than ever, I'm feeling that my time is precious and you should be happy. You should enjoy your hobbies. You should be very, I'm not gonna say you, I'm gonna say me. I should be happy. I should enjoy my hobbies. I should really enjoy what I'm doing. I think I've brought that into my life this year with everything, not just with reading. If I'm not enjoying what I'm doing and it's a hobby and it's something that I'm doing for pleasure, obviously at work, in relationships with people, we're gonna do things that we don't like to do, right? But if it's something that I'm supposed to be doing for fun, a hobby, I don't know, something that I'm paying for, something that I'm spending my time on, that I don't have to spend my time on, then it's gotta be something that I really enjoy. And yeah, maybe that's why I didn't have such a great reading year this year. I was a little more critical, not necessarily of writing, but more of just, if I'm not enjoying this, I'm not gonna finish it. One of the books that I read in December that I really enjoyed was Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. Like everybody else, I read her Shadowhunter books when I was in high school, and I met her at a couple book signings, and I don't know, I just haven't really kept up with her books recently. I read the first book of the new series. I'm holding the sequel to Chain of Gold in my hands. I read Lady Midnight, but I didn't continue. That's the Dark Artifices series. I didn't continue that. My best friend Sydney really loved Chain of Gold. I think she read it last year, and she kept telling me that I need to read this, and she was in a reading mood like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, you know what, let me be in a reading mood too. So I had the first book and the second book on my shelves. I bought them on sale, I think, and I was like, let me read this because Sydney said it was good, and I really loved it. I didn't like Lady Midnight when I read it, but I loved Cassandra Clare so much when I was 16. I don't know what it is. I'm reverting to the person I was when I was 16, which is fine, I guess. I really loved her books when I was a teenager, and reading Chain of Gold felt like I was a teenager again. It felt super just like on the edge of my seat while I was reading. I took this big book, the first book is just as big as this one, this big book to work with me. I read on the subway and I almost missed my stop, which like never happens. I like have my commute down, but I was reading on the subway and I got so lost in the book that I literally almost missed my stop to get off at work at like 6 in the morning. No, at like 7 in the morning too, which is crazy. But anyways, this is definitely on my TBR for January. I could have started it already. Did I start it already? No, not yet. I could have started it already, but I haven't. I'm just waiting for the new year, so I have something really fun to read and something that I know I'm gonna enjoy. Cassandra Clare really, she has me waiting with bated breath. You know, I don't know what it is about her books. She's got some crack laced into these words because I am just eating it up. I'm really excited to read this next month. I think I'm gonna love it, and I think the third book is coming out very soon in the springtime, so that's something that's very exciting. Okay, so this is my first book on my TBR for January. I had to pause to reapply lip gloss and drink some water. Anyways, the next book on my January TBR is called Suburban Hell by Maureen Kilmer. I'm gonna be buddy reading this with my best friend Sid, who I've mentioned. I saw this book at Barnes & Noble, and surprisingly in the last like 2 years, books that I've really enjoyed have been books about middle-aged white suburban moms. It might have started with that book that became, I think by the author Liane Moriarty, that became a show with Nicole Kidman. The name is escaping me. Big Little Lies. Maybe that was the book that like started this fascination, but I really enjoyed that book a couple years ago, and I've just read a couple more books about middle-aged white suburban moms, and I've really enjoyed them. I found them really funny. I think the author's name is Grady Hendrix, who writes like the horror, I'm pretty sure that's their name. But yeah, I read the Guide to Southern Vampires. I'm like not remembering anything right now. It's Christmas. Today's Christmas. It's nighttime. It's been a very busy week for me, but I really enjoyed that book. I've read a couple other books about white middle-aged suburban moms, and I really enjoyed them. I'm a 26-year-old first-generation Dominican American in New York, so reading about a middle-aged white suburban mom is like fantasy for me. It's like a whole nother universe. And just reading about like husbands and Pilates and neighborhoods and driving their big cars with like their soccer mom vans, and I don't know, it's just, they're so funny and interesting, and I've really been enjoying them lately. So I'm gonna buddy read this with my best friend. I saw it at Barnes & Noble on a display table. Looked really funny. I think it's like some moms are fighting demon possession. I don't know, looked funny, looked cool. We're gonna buddy read it. She's also not been having the best reading year she also hasn't been having the best time reading this year either. So I think if we read something together, it'll be a little more enjoyable. Anyways, the third book on my list. All of the books on my January TBR are kind of dark and maybe a little more suited for like October or fall, November-ish, but whatever, it is what it is. The third book on my TBR is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I read the first book when it came out. Really, really enjoyed it. My brother is a student at Yale, and I just found the setting. I was really familiar with it because I'd visited him so many times and like slept over in his dorm, an apartment, whatever. I just found it really compelling and really interesting, so I don't know. I'm excited for the sequel. I think since I'll be reading Chain of Iron, which is like in London, which is kind of dark and gloomy and rainy, and Shadowhunters are kind of like gloomy, and then Suburban Hell is like a horror. I think it's like a horror dark comedy. Hellbent should be like right on that track, which is like urban fantasy, I would say, modern fantasy, horror-ish. I don't know, but I'm really excited to read it. I really love the first book. I think it's gonna be very, very interesting. The cover is kind of scary. Don't love it. Maybe I'll buy it online so I don't have to look at the cover, but I don't know, we'll see. Maybe if it's like hardcover, it has one of those jackets. Anyways, regardless, the next book that's on my TBR is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Everybody and their moms have read this book already. I'm just really late to the game. My best friend Sid, she bought this book, she owns it, so I'm gonna be borrowing it from her. She hasn't finished it yet. I don't know if she's planning on finishing it. She might. I've heard really, really good things about this book. It's like dark academia, fantasy vibes. I really, really love reading fantasy, and I think one of my mistakes this year was that I was trying to read a lot of romantic fantasy, and I didn't really know where to start. I read a lot of stuff on Kindle Unlimited. I also just like went to the romance section at Barnes & Noble or in the library and tried to find some things. I don't think I necessarily read the best picks that there are in romantic fantasy. I love fantasy in general, and I love romance in general, and I think I was trying to bring the two together, and I just wasn't finding good books. A lot of the books I was reading were maybe books that were like self-published and not as well written, or characters weren't fleshed out, or there were like a lot of plot holes, and I just felt like I was wasting my time. I did read a couple where I was like, oh my god, I literally love this. It's so fun and exactly what I wanted. But I'm not gonna go into the mindset that I'm gonna be reading like a great romance when I read this. Obviously, it's not marketed as a romance at all. But I don't think I'm gonna go into reading any of these books with high hopes anyways. The only one that I'm really excited for is Chain of Iron, because I read the first book and I loved it, and I know Cassie Clare's writing like the back of my hand. But I still am excited to read Babel. I'm just not like, I don't have any expectations, and I think since I don't have any expectations, I'll be pleasantly surprised. The final book on my TBR, I know I just said that I read a bunch of terrible romantic fantasy. And the book that I'm about to say is romantic fantasy. I'm gonna be reading Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. I feel like this is what I was looking for all of 2022 and I couldn't find. She's like a staple in the romantic fantasy world, and I love vampires. I'm like a child of Twilight. I will defend Twilight till the day I die. Not Stephenie Meyer, Twilight, yes. I don't know why I never picked this up. I just have always seen it and just have never decided to read it. I think it'll be kind of corny and kind of cringy. I think it was like written in like 2004 or something. I'm sure it'll have plenty of Y2K references that will be cringy, but I don't know, like I need something good and just like something, you know what I mean? So those are my 5 books on my January TBR. I'm gonna try to read more than 5 books, but these are the 5 books that I have that I'm definitely gonna start and that hopefully will kickstart me into having a wonderful reading year. Just to recap, the books that I'm going to be reading in January: Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. Right here, this big boy. It's big, but I'm pretty sure I'll read it really quickly because I read Chain of Gold really quickly. Next book I'll be reading is Suburban Hell by Maureen Kilmer. I'm going to be buddy reading that with my best friend, so I'll definitely finish that unless we both really, really hate it and decide to stop reading it. If not, if she likes it, and even if I don't like it, I will still continue it. I will read it for her. I'm also going to be reading Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I don't know when it's coming out. I know it's coming out in January, but I don't know when. Whenever it comes out, I will be reading it. I'm going to also read Babel by R.F. Kuang. I'm really excited to read it because I've heard so many good things, but like I said before, I'm not going in with the highest expectations. I'm more just going in excited to start a new book, new dark academia book. I think January is still, you know, cold, kind of dark. The days aren't as long, so I think it'll still be a good time to read some gloomy, maybe a little spooky, dark academia vibes. And then the final book I'm going to be reading is Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. That might be the best book I read in January. It might be the worst. Let's see. If you've watched this far, thank you for watching me ramble on and on about what I'm gonna read in January and why I had such a terrible reading year in 2022. If you read any really great books, please recommend them to me. If you have any romantic fantasy recommendations, please recommend them to me. I don't really stick to any one genre. I'm a pretty good reader at all genres. I will try anything. So if you have something that you really, really loved in 2022, please let me know. Hit me up. If you like BTS, try to guess who my bias is by the decor surrounding me. And I think that's all. I will update with my thoughts on these 5 books, if I finish them, if I'm still reading them, if I'm enjoying them. So if you're interested, stick around. Thank you for watching.